Oh, good morning, my kindred spirits, my beautiful spiritual siblings. I'm so happy to be here, as I always am. It's so great to see you. I got a wonderful compliment this morning. Joe said, "This is one of the coolest ministers. She's the coolest minister." And I was like, okay, I'll take that. But I wasn't sure if it was because of, beg your pardon? The coolest. Sorry, I misquoted Joe. I am the coolest minister. But I wasn't sure if it was because of my outfit or maybe my hairdo. I'm hoping it's because of my message. The topic today is acceptance equals empowerment. Acceptance is the path to empowerment. Empowerment brings me a healthier life, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I know I'm living in the flow of life. That is empowerment. Acceptance is not acquiescence. It is not abdication. Acceptance is not loss. It is gain. Acceptance is empowerment through the examination of my challenge around acceptance, because I am informed about my own mental, emotional, and spiritual tricks that keep me from mindful peace and harmony in the world about me, which is disempowerment. You know, recently I've been going to physical therapy because I have plantar fasciitis, which is a very painful thing that can happen in your heel. And I expected when I got there he was going to, rub my foot and do this, stretch it, this and that. And he started to focus on my breathing. Now, I'm a chakra therapist. I know about breathing. But somehow there was a disconnect. So my thoughts about what was going to happen and what actually happened annoyed me. And I was in non-acceptance of what he was doing. And actually, it works. Empowerment is the power to do something or not, to accept something, and that something is up to you. There are spiritual principles, laws that operate, whether I'm aware of them, or I believe them, or I pay attention to them or not. Because it has been shown that our thinking has direct impact on the cells of our bodies. And we literally are transformed. So acceptance does have its way with us, just as non-acceptance does. So you choose. I heard a story about a minister who was preaching about the law of mind action. With great passion, this preacher talked about the very thoughts we hold in our minds that become our reality. And all during the sermon, this pastor saw a teenage boy squirming in his seat while the pastor spoke. And the more the minister preached, the more upset this young man became. So the minister finally got a chance to talk with him later, and he asked this young man, what's up? And the young teenage boy said sheepishly, "Well, Pastor, all I think about are girls these days. And I don't want to be a girl." So we can see the distortion of the understanding of the law of mind action. The teenager lacked the acceptance of his thoughts. He thought he was subject to them with a definitive ending, that he would become a girl. His thinking was filled with fear and unacceptance of his thoughts about girls. So this lack of acceptance of my thoughts banishes me to a life fettered with distortions. And then I wonder why this fear or negativity is showing up in my life. Like attracts like. Personal relationships are probably one of the major challenges of us all. Mostly, I think my problems are with other people. Difficult people. The one who cuts in line. And the one who complains about the weather. Now, I can accept stormy and rainy days, but sometimes I cannot accept the person who has a problem with the weather. When I'm sitting on the subway, I may not judge the junkie sitting across from me. I'll judge the person 2 people down who judges the junkie. They need so much correction. And that is what we could call spiritual arrogance. I used to think that spirituality was so pure until I realized it's in my head. And my head is the problem. My mind is the problem, not spirituality. What am I suffering from? I'm suffering from the lack of acceptance of others in the world. My need to correct another. And why? To feel superior? To show how enlightened I am? To be perfect? It's a tragic irony when I cannot accept someone for how I think they should be thinking or acting and judge them when I cannot even control my own thoughts. Tragic irony. I sometimes live in the annoyance of others' behaviors or their even existence because love is absent from my heart. I may want to change others, but I only have power to change or transform my own perspective of others and myself. And that's empowerment. In a past talk here a few months back, I explained how acceptance is receiving. That I am empowered over whatever it is, that whether I like it or not is not the point, that I have power to overcome this by accepting the reception. I can choose to accept to see the world as it is, or I can see it in my own terms. And if I translate an event into my own terms, let's say negatively, then I am inviting like attractions. If I accept the event, let's say, with a benign attitude of acceptance, then I invite kindliness. And we all interpret the material world around us through our own filters. We all have them. I interpret the world differently than a person of color or a deaf person would. So the material world is really not the world. It is my conclusion of my mental responses to the stimuli and responses according to my own awareness of my senses. And there are unconscious thought patterns that add to my impressions. Some are prejudicial, some are biased, some unaware, and some habitual. Now, I could see myself as a victim of stupid people or mean people. But this is my own interpretation of what I see as real. Is that person or those persons really stupid? Or do I impose my standard of intelligence on that individual or that group? Am I really being treated meanly? Or do I interpret through my filters that he or she or they are mean? Am I really a victim or the subject of my own biases? That all presupposes that we are not one with Great Source, that Great Source does not live in all of us, and that belief, those thoughts, supplants my ability to change what I think and how I view the world. I'm left unable to accept anyone or anything. And once I accept that belief as true for me, then I can see that I attract into my world that which I believe. So if I believe I'm victimized by stupid people, I will attract those into my life who present with a different approach to thinking. And that if I perceive people as mean to me, guess what I manifest? That which I believe. Once I accept that as a spiritual law, I change how I think. Thereby, wise, generous people populate my life. My non-acceptant position stems from the desire for something else, someone else, something other than what is. And that desire in and of itself is not terrible. It's a natural instinct. Yet, when that desire is warped by entitlement, not cooperation, or tainted by self-serving motivations, fear, lust, greed, and not serving the world, then I am subject to a backfire from the lack of acceptance. And eventually, I pay a dear price for this. But once I accept where I am fearful. I am greedy. I can then progress forward with prayers in the direct union with Great Spirit, divinely guided, without subrogating the divine to the back seat of the spiritual bus. And if someone annoys me, let's say a sibling, and I continue that resentment into the next day, or the next week, or the next year, or the next decade, who really suffers? He or she probably has no idea of what's bugging me. They may live miles away, but I grind that resentment into the future. And what happens? I miss the now moment. Even when I am not within the same precincts, that lack of acceptance eats away at me. Then that resentment obstructs my relationship with Universal Spirit, myself, with my wife, or an institution, or others. I am unpresent to myself or anyone else. And my wife may ask, what's wrong? And then I go into all the reasons why I'm annoyed, with perfect rationalizations for my hurt feelings, for my being unseen, for being unheard, and on and on and on with spiteful thinking. And that is uncontrolled thinking, undirected to any sound purpose. Rather than temper my thoughts, I bolster my negative thinking. Why? Because I lack acceptance. I lack acceptance of my sibling. I lack acceptance of my thoughts. I lack acceptance to live from love. I lack living the universal law of cause and effect. I haven't accepted into my heart the value of the treatment of the mind, to recondition my thoughts through affirmative prayer. For me, part of the process of acceptance is understanding that I do not have to like what I perceive as unacceptable. I always think, well, if I accept that, then I'm just letting in all this stuff that I don't really want to let in. But that's not actually what it is. Once I say something is unacceptable, guess what? It becomes greater than it was to begin with, because now it's unacceptable. I can't even accept it because it's unacceptable. Where does that leave me? To accept does not mean that I endorse the situation or the person's behavior. By accepting, I am not supporting the unacceptable issue. It means I realize, through my own examination of my feelings, that I cannot control what is happening nor change it. By accepting it, by giving it a place to be what it is, it gives me freedom to choose something else, and my path is lessened. Empowerment. I'm allowed to have my feelings, and I need to examine my feelings about my feelings. If I feel unheard, then I have to look at my reaction to not being heard. My feeling response, is it commensurate with the feeling that I'm not heard? Is there anger? Is there control? Guilt? Shame? Fear? Justification? Rationalization? And knowing if any of these are present, I may need to go deeper. That's where writing is very helpful for me. I write down my feelings about that person or that institution, and then I ask myself, why? What do I get out of it? And there's always a payoff. Albeit it may be a negative one, but there is always a payoff for that motivation that will come clear. Is there an exaggeration of my feeling about the situation? Is that reaction an accurate assessment of what I'm actually feeling? And am I expecting something from someone or some institution that they are incapable of delivering the thing that I expect? Why would I do that? If they can't deliver it, why am I asking for it? It's not Amazon. Is my reaction a lack of acceptance? Is it exaggerated? And what makes it so? What am I in need of that makes it so unacceptable? Is that what's really going on? Am I living in the past or incorrectly assessing it because there's another motive behind it? Do I want to be superior? Do I want to be right? Am I judging another for harms done to me or done to others? Am I expecting something that is not available to me? And if so, why am I doing that? In all these cases, I am not accepting what is. And once I recognize that my lack of acceptance invites undue harm upon myself through anxiety and shame, then I am empowered to both feel my feelings and take necessary action. But when I struggle or omit acceptance, then that brings me deeper into resistance. Years ago, an old friend, a spiritual teacher, said to me, "The pain is in the resistance." Carl Jung said, "What we resist persists." Whatever pain I may be coming toward me, the more I resist, the worse it becomes. And that behavior intensifies suffering. And that's at my own hand because I resist. And I don't have to suffer over my suffering. It's an unfortunate and unwanted outcome. Accepting that acceptance is a practice gives me more opportunity to practice acceptance. And acceptance practice moves beyond a static position. I become fluid in the system. Acceptance is an active practice. And accepting it is forever erroneously implies that I do it once and it's done. Actually, it's just for now. And that's why it's a practice. And please remember that acceptance can come in bits and pieces, not all at once. It may be an extended process. And I have been through acceptance of past horrendous situations, and then years later, with deeper memory and deeper understanding, I have to go back and deepen my acceptance process and practice of that situation, person, place, or thing. Keeping my acceptance practice in the day is empowering. After all, that's all we really have, and maybe only the next few minutes. And let's also be aware of self-forgiveness in this acceptance process. Compassion toward myself is required. And then that compassion moves outward toward others. And having compassion for not fully accepting something is also a process. I may find that I have to go back and forth. One day I'm accepting, the next day I'm not, until I fully come into my own empowerment. Some days I am more self-loving than others. I am human. I allow for a range of movements toward acceptance, toward empowerment. Acceptance is about me, not the person, not the place, not the thing. What is it about me that inspires these particular feelings around this particular issue? What keeps me from accepting life on life's terms? And when I have a pretty good sketch of all that, can I accept myself for it all? And when I do, I am empowered to move forward. And when I release it all to the universe and reclaim my peace and my joy, I am empowered. I can accept that I am powerless over many things, and I can change my own mind about anyone or anything. And when I do that, I am empowered to have a harmonious life, and I manifest. Acceptance is not acquiescence. It is not abdication. Acceptance is empowerment. I am empowered by acceptance to manifest into my life the abundance, the joy, the love that each one of us has as our birthright, as one with great universal spirit. Acceptance is the way to truth. Truth is the way to authenticity. Authenticity is the way to empowerment. Acceptance equals empowerment. And so it is.